This isn't your seat. I don't care what it says, Kristen Walsh snapped, plucking the platinum boarding pass from Malcolm Everett's hand without so much as a glance. Her eyes, cool and confident, scanned him like a problem that didn't belong. Security can escort you back to economy or out entirely. Your choice. The words hit like a slap just outside gate C-17 at JFK. Slicing through the low murmur of pre-boarding chatter, Malcolm Everett, impeccably dressed in a navy three-piece suit, calm as the morning tide, stood still, his broad shoulders relaxed, eyes unreadable. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't flinch. But the terminal air shifted. People paused. Phones came up. Cameras clicked into record. And as Kristen turned her back to prioritize the next guest, she missed the faint vibration on Malcolm's wrist, his smartwatch lighting up with a signal only 2 people on Earth understood. Plan Y was live. Diane Foster, draped in designer gray and entitlement, nudged forward with a smirk, brushing past Malcolm like he was furniture. "That's 2A, she chirped. "I always fly 2A. Can we move this along?" Kristen offered her a smile like service was a gift. "Of course, Ms. Foster. We'll just take care of this gentleman." She didn't say what she meant. She didn't have to. Everyone in line saw it, the subtle dismissiveness, the practiced exclusion, and Malcolm recognized it too. He'd seen it in boardrooms when people assumed he was security. He'd heard it in country clubs when they mistook him for the driver. But what Kristen didn't know, and what would soon cost her a career, was that this wasn't just any businessman she was pushing aside. Malcolm Everett wasn't flying for comfort. He was flying for leverage, and Horizon Air was already hanging by a thread. 20 feet away, Isaiah Reed had his phone up, filming. "This is wild," he whispered to his 3 million followers on TikTok. "This guy had a valid pass. They just pulled it like it was fake. And now they're giving his seat to some hedge fund Barbie." The video posted instantly. Within minutes, it hit 10,000 views. By the time Malcolm spoke again, it would pass 50. "Is there a reason my pass was voided?" he asked. Tone like steel wrapped in velvet. Kristen didn't look at him. "There was a system error. We're resolving it." "So you voided it by hand," Malcolm replied. "You didn't even scan it." Silence followed, not denial, just cold defiance. A few passengers behind them shifted uncomfortably. A woman whispered. "That's not right," a man further down muttered. "He's got a suit nicer than the pilot." Seated discreetly off to the side, Simone Carter, Malcolm's assistant, tapped open a secure chat. Malcolm's boarding pass just got canceled. "ETA for Ethan?" The reply came back in seconds. 4 minutes out. Carla's already in the system. Simone didn't need to explain. Carla Mendez, Zenith Global's ethics officer, was quietly logged into Horizon Air's back-end systems. Watching gate activity in real time, Malcolm gave a subtle nod, and Simone tapped a command. It looked like nothing more than her checking an email, but it triggered a silent chain. Carla began capturing Kristen's terminal data. Every click, every screen, every unjustified error. Ethan Brooks, in-house counsel with an Ivy League brain and a blue-collar fire, strode up from the security checkpoint. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, though he already knew. Malcolm gestured slightly. "Apparently, my seat no longer exists." Ethan turned to Kristen. "Under 14 CFR Part 382, denial of boarding based on race is a federal violation. He has a valid pass. I'd suggest you correct the mistake." Kristen's jaw locked. "He was causing a delay." Ethan glanced at the time. "The flight isn't even boarding yet. The only delay here is administrative." Diane rolled her eyes. "Oh, for God's sake, can't he just sit somewhere else?" Isaiah turned his camera toward her. "Say that louder, please." From the far wall, journalist Lena Huang observed the scene unfold, her fingers flying across her phone. She'd just posted, Breaking. Horizon Air Gate Agent voids boarding pass of black executive. Hands seat to white passenger. FAA regs say otherwise. Developing story. The tweet was under a minute old and already catching fire. Malcolm exhaled slowly, then stepped aside from the counter, not in retreat, but in quiet calculation. He took a seat by the window, folded his hands, and waited. He didn't need to raise his voice. He had patience, he had witnesses, he had data, and he had a plan. Simone's phone pinged. Carla. We have full footage. Kristen manually voided the pass. No system error. Diane flagged in the manifest override file. Jared Tate just accessed cabin seating codes. Simone leaned in. Jared's in on it. Carla's tracking logs. What's the call? Malcolm's voice was barely audible. Let it play. Then we drop it all. Kristen thought she was preventing a passenger from boarding. What she didn't know was she'd just triggered a system-wide reckoning. Before we continue, have you ever been shut out of a space you earned just because of how you looked? You're not alone. Share your story in the comments, and if you believe in justice, hit subscribe. Malcolm Everett's fight is just beginning. So he waited. The plane hadn't even pushed back yet. The delay was still listed at 20 minutes, an auxiliary power failure, they said. But the real damage had already begun. Kristen Walsh thought she was flexing authority. She didn't realize she was handing Malcolm Everett the very moment he needed, to bring her airline to its knees. Roger Klein stood tall beside the gate like he was guarding something sacred, arms crossed over his Horizon Air blazer, eyes locked on Malcolm Everett with that all-too-familiar smirk, the one reserved for men who didn't look the part. Kristen Walsh leaned over the counter again, still pretending to scroll through non-existent glitches on her screen. It's still not resolving, she said, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Looks like we'll need to assign the seat elsewhere. Diane Foster, now sipping mineral water from the lounge bar cart they wheeled over just for her, lifted her glass in mock sympathy. Technology's not always on our side, she said with a smirk, behind them. Jared Tate entered through the side gate, holding a Horizon-issued tablet tucked under one arm and a USB drive already slipped into his jacket pocket. We're running diagnostics on the cabin assignment module, he announced quickly to Kristen. Manual overrides engaged, but I'll take care of the updates. He gave Malcolm a brief, expressionless glance, just long enough to convey this wasn't about systems. It was personal. Jared didn't work ground crew. He was an internal tech specialist, and he didn't belong at this gate unless something was being fixed or sabotaged. Within seconds, the screen over Kristen's shoulder flickered. Malcolm Everett's name disappeared from seat 2A, replaced with the word unassigned. Jared tapped once more, then turned to walk away. Not a word spoken, not a question asked. Simone Carter narrowed her eyes and muttered into her Bluetooth earpiece. We've got unauthorized overrides at the gate. Jared's bypassed the manifest. On her tablet, a mirrored display showed the exact changes in real time, thanks to Zenith Global's silent surveillance sync. Carla, confirm? Carla Mendez, on the other side of town in a quiet co-working office, replied coolly, confirmed. Jared manually cleared 2A. There's no system error. Kristen's screen was never frozen. They're staging this. Simone's pulse quickened. That's tampering under FAA compliance. Ethan needs to speak. At the boarding podium, Ethan Brooks had already stepped forward, holding up his ID. As legal counsel representing Mr. Everett, I need to formally inform you that tampering with seat assignments on a confirmed boarding pass, particularly in the presence of active recording, is a regulatory violation under Title 14, CFR Part 250. Kristen scoffed. Sir, you're escalating nothing into something. Our system is just updating. That system, Ethan countered, was updated by an unauthorized third party with a USB, and I have 3 recordings showing it. A small crowd had formed now. Passengers watched with a mix of concern and curiosity. Isaiah Reed panned his phone around, narrating to his followers. "You guys see that? Tech guy just plugged in a drive. Now the seat's gone. It's not a glitch. It's a hit job." The hashtag Horizon Air Sinks flashed on screen. Within moments, it began trending across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. One video replayed Kristen's words. "This isn't your seat," over slow zoom cuts of Malcolm's calm face and Diane's smug expression. Another showed Jared slotting the USB in while pretending to check settings. And just as the tension began to boil, Carla made her move. From her terminal, she accessed the intercom system through a backdoor protocol embedded in Horizon Air's legacy platform. One Zenith Global had helped design during the merger negotiation. With a single click, the gate's loudspeakers came alive, and Carla's voice rang out, clear and steady. "Attention passengers awaiting boarding on Flight 842 to Atlanta. Please be advised that internal tampering with seat assignments has just been confirmed at Gate C-17. This is an ongoing ethics breach under investigation. Please remain calm." Gasps followed. Kristen's face turned pale. Jared, halfway to the terminal exit, stopped dead in his tracks. Roger barked into his walkie-talkie. "Who authorized that broadcast?" Ethan replied, not missing a beat. "Your investor just did." Simone approached Malcolm quietly. "All systems logging. Carla's already sent encrypted files to Lena, CNN, and FAA regulators. Do you want to call it now?" Malcolm didn't blink. "Let them show us who they really are." At that moment, Kristen marched up to Malcolm again. "Sir, you're disrupting this boarding process. I'm asking you one final time to step away, or we'll call Port Authority." Malcolm looked her in the eye. "You've already made your choice. Now watch what it costs." He turned to Isaiah, who was still streaming. "Keep rolling." Diane stood, arms folded, offended by the lack of control. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said. "I get those seats on every flight, if he's that important. He wouldn't be here arguing." Isaiah panned the camera to her. "Say that again," he said softly. Diane hesitated. "Just move on, sir. There are more important things." Isaiah added a new caption. "She said he must not be important. Turns out he's the guy who writes her paychecks." Lena Huang posted her third update of the hour. Breaking. Horizon Air gate and tech crew caught in real-time tampering. Whistleblower confirms system override. Investor reportedly involved. Hashtag Horizon Air sinks. Hashtag passenger rights. The story hit 3 million impressions before boarding even resumed. The gate became chaos. People weren't just filming. They were speaking up. A middle-aged woman asked, "If they did that to him, what's stopping them from doing it to us?" A younger man said, "That's criminal." Literally, Carla's broadcast continued in intervals, calmly describing FAA protocol and highlighting that internal manipulation of flight manifests can void airline insurance and trigger investor reviews. Roger tried to step in. "We've got it under control," he said, his voice taut. "Nothing illegal occurred here." Ethan pulled up a digital log and held it up. "You want to go live to the FAA compliance officer right now? Because we can—" Jared made the mistake of trying to grab his tablet back from Simone. She held it tighter. "This is now evidence. Touch it again, and I'll have you cited for obstruction." Carla's voice returned once more over the intercom, this time accompanied by a tone from the gate's alert system. "Manifest anomaly confirmed. Passenger Malcolm Everett remains active under original seat assignment. Further manipulation will be reported." Malcolm remained seated, phone in one hand, index finger tapping once more on his watch. A second signal was sent. "Phase 2 activated. Simone whispered. Zenith control is in motion. Kristen finally snapped. I don't care who you are. You don't own this airline. Malcolm turned slowly, rising to his feet. He didn't raise his voice. He simply smiled and said, Not yet. Kristen Walsh's hand moved faster than anyone expected. As Malcolm stood with effortless grace in front of gate C-17, she reached forward and snatched his phone from his palm without a word. This is airline property now, she snapped, twisting the screen toward herself as if to erase the growing archive of evidence Malcolm had been quietly documenting. You can't record internal operations, she said, ignoring that she was in a public terminal surrounded by dozens of passengers and at least 6 actively filming phones. The moment her fingers closed around his device, an audible gasp rippled through the line. That's theft, Isaiah said aloud, voice incredulous. You just stole his phone, Kristen glared back. Security protocol. She shoved it under the counter. Malcolm didn't flinch. You're writing your own resignation, he said softly, his voice calm but loaded with something ancient, a warning, not a threat, to his left. Diane Foster laughed again. Finally, maybe now we can board without all this noise. But the terminal had turned. What began as side-eyes and whispers had evolved into full outrage. Travelers were now narrating their own versions on live streams, some shouting facts, others simply yelling. Let the man board, from his seat. Jared Tate glanced up from the tablet he was still logged into and, with calculated pettiness, tapped one final command. Seat 2A, Malcolm Everett's rightful seat, was locked out, the tray table digitally sealed, the touchscreen disabled, in-flight service options disabled, a petty insult disguised as protocol, as if Malcolm, a billionaire, would care about recline options. But it wasn't about comfort. It was about power. Jared knew it, Roger knew it, Kristen knew it too, but none of them realized Malcolm wasn't reacting. He was recording everything mentally, piece by piece, for a response they couldn't comprehend. Roger finally stepped forward, badge gleaming under harsh terminal light. Sir, for safety reasons, we're going to have to ask you to exit this zone. You've been non-compliant. Ethan's voice cut across him. He's done nothing of the sort. You violated FAA boarding rights, voided his seat without process, and now you've physically confiscated his property. I'd advise you to step back unless you'd like your badge number posted along with this footage. Roger's bravado flickered. You can't threaten staff. I'm not threatening, Ethan replied coolly. I'm lawyering. The air had shifted again. Lena Huang now stood with her camera pointed squarely at the gate agents. Can you repeat that for the record? She asked. Kristen spun around. You need to stop filming. No, Lena said. You need to stop lying. Isaiah, now surrounded by a group of fellow passengers, updated his followers. They just stole his phone. This is what it looks like when people in power panic. Keep sharing this. Use the hashtag, let's make it unmissable. Within seconds, hashtag Horizon Air Sinks broke 1 million mentions. Somewhere inside Horizon Air's Midtown Manhattan HQ, a junior analyst monitoring brand metrics jolted upright. We've got a PR anomaly on C-17, he said, like spike level bad. Across terminals, news apps began buzzing. Viral bias incident, investor humiliated, tampering confirmed. People weren't boarding anymore. They were glued to their screens. Airport security hesitated at the edge of the scene. They weren't moving in. Too many cameras. Too much heat. In the thick of it. Diane huffed dramatically and turned toward Kristen. Isn't there a lounge I can wait in while you handle this circus? Malcolm turned his head slightly. No, you'll want to stay right here, he said. You're going to witness what accountability looks like. Up close. Simone Carter received a ping on her tablet. We've hit 3 million views, she whispered. Carla says Reddit has the footage. It's being translated into Spanish, Korean, and Portuguese, trending in 4 countries. Malcolm stayed still. Phase 3, he said. Simone nodded. Carla's second command went live, the broadcast logs, edited and annotated, sent to 5 national newsrooms. At the same time, Ethan uploaded a public legal brief citing every federal violation committed at the gate in the last 40 minutes. Lena's article. Investor sabotaged at JFK, how bias still boards first. Hit 100,000 shares in under 30 minutes. Back at the terminal, a Horizon Air staffer approached, eyes wide. Mr. Everett, would you be willing to board now if we reseat you? It was too late. I'm not boarding, Malcolm said. I'm documenting. His voice was calm, deadly. Every delay, every override, every insult. And I'm doing it in real time so your board of directors can watch it all. Along with the world. Kristen, now visibly sweating, reached for her radio. Dispatch. Gate request. Malcolm raised a single finger. I wouldn't. She froze. He turned slightly to Simone. Let Diane know what's happening next. Simone stepped forward. Horizon Air's quarterly investment report goes live in 36 hours. Malcolm holds 12% via Zenith Global's equity sleeve. He's already issued a motion to retract that investment, if it clears. Your valuation drops 34%. In under 2 days, Diane's jaw slackened. You're bluffing, Simone smiled. Check Bloomberg. Passengers gasped. One woman murmured. Wait, he owns the airline? Isaiah spoke louder. No, but he's about to unown them. At that moment, the terminal erupted. Passengers weren't just whispering, they were cheering. Applause broke out from one end of the gate to the other. Travelers who had watched in silent disbelief were now vocal. A businessman yelled, Sue them! A flight attendant from another airline whispered, Get 'em, sir! And then it happened. Hashtag Horizon Air sinks past 30 million impressions. The airline's booking system crashed from the load. Call centers lit up with cancellation requests. Shareholder chat rooms exploded with sell alerts. Kristen stumbled back from the podium like the floor had shifted. What's happening? She asked aloud. Jared turned pale, fumbling with his tablet. This wasn't supposed to. But Malcolm wasn't listening anymore. He walked back to the terminal seats, took out a second phone from his inside blazer pocket, and began drafting the closing sentence of his open letter to Horizon Air's CEO. You didn't just lose a passenger, you lost your future. And that was only the beginning. The first-class cabin of Horizon Air Flight 842, still grounded at JFK, had turned into a theater of discomfort and confusion. Tray tables clicked as passengers shifted nervously, eyes darting between flight attendants who no longer gave instructions, but shared glances, furtive, anxious, uncertain. The monitors above blinked inconsistently, stuck between boarding updates and frozen security protocols, outside the cabin door. Malcolm Everett remained poised, his presence now amplified by silence. No crew member dared to make eye contact. He didn't raise his voice, didn't push forward, didn't demand anything, but his very refusal to retreat had seized control of the aircraft's atmosphere. The hashtag Horizon Air Sinks had crossed 40 million mentions. Lena Huang's investigative tweet, now pinned to the top of national feeds, read, Exclusive. Documents confirm internal overrides. Horizon Air may have violated multiple federal statutes. Flight 842 could be the scene of the industry's next reckoning. In the aisle of row 2, Diane Foster, who had previously sneered, now sat with arms crossed and jaw tight. This is absurd, she muttered, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. All this over a seat? A young man across from her, still holding his phone, replied without looking up. No, ma'am. It's about what they think comes with the seat. Another added, And who they think doesn't belong in it? That line stuck in the air like smoke. Inside the cockpit, the captain, an older man with 20 years of clean service and no taste for public scandal, pulled his headset down. "We're still under ground delay due to the APU," he told the control tower, but his voice wavered. Everyone on board knew the issue wasn't mechanical anymore. It was moral. Roger Klein stepped into the front galley and barked. "We need to move forward. Assign the open seats. Let's get in the air before this escalates." But it had already escalated. One of the younger flight attendants quietly left her jump seat, approached Malcolm at the door, and said under her breath, "I'm sorry, sir. I saw the footage. I saw what they did. If there's anything I can do." Malcolm held up one hand gently, stopping her. "You've already done it." "You stood up?" Behind her, Kristen Walsh leaned out from the gate desk, still flushed, still trying to maintain control. "Are we boarding or not?" she demanded, her voice cracking. But no one followed her lead. Power had shifted, and everyone could feel it. Simone Carter approached Malcolm from the terminal, phone in one hand, her expression composed. "We've confirmed the numbers. 40.6 million total views across all platforms. Bookings for Horizon are down 9% in the last 3 hours. Carla just pushed the regulatory complaint packet to DOT, FAA, and the House Transportation Committee. Ethan's got confirmation from our legal team. The class action structure is ready." Malcolm nodded. "Passengers?" Simone glanced at her second phone. "Over a dozen filed complaints. 5 have already canceled return tickets. And..." She paused. "2 pilot unions have now reposted Isaiah's video. No official statement yet. But the signals are clear. From the back of the jet bridge." Lena Huang approached with her camera still running. "Mr. Everett," she said, "may I ask, are you planning to pursue this with federal action?" Malcolm looked at her evenly. "This isn't just a lawsuit. It's a case study in what happens when power meets arrogance." He turned back toward the cabin, where Kristen now stood behind Roger, trying to avoid eye contact with the filming passengers. "Let's make this official." He took 2 steps forward. The crowd quieted. Simone followed, holding a tablet already synced to Carla's remote dashboard. Malcolm looked around the front of the plane, into the faces of first-class passengers who now held phones like shields, watching what they knew was no longer just a boarding incident. It was a moment of exposure. "To the passengers of Flight 842, he said, not shouting, not performing, but simply declaring. "My name is Malcolm Everett. I am the CEO of Zenith Global. Until today. I was also Horizon Air's second-largest private investor." Kristen visibly recoiled. Diane looked like she'd been slapped. Roger's mouth fell slightly open. Malcolm continued. "In the last 30 minutes, your airline has manually voided my seat assignment, confiscated my property, digitally erased my presence, and attempted to humiliate me in front of you." He paused. "What they didn't know is that I don't raise my voice. I raise the consequences." Simone tapped the tablet. "As of now, Horizon Air's projected valuation will lose 1/3 of its value by sunrise. Our partners are divesting. Our media teams are on standby. And our legal strategy is already in motion." The plane was utterly silent. Kristen leaned forward, whispering to Roger, "Can he actually do this?" But Roger had already stepped back. He wasn't protecting her anymore. A young mother in seat 3C whispered, "He's doing it," another man murmured. "He just bankrupted the flight without lifting a finger." Malcolm raised his chin, surveying the space that tried to deny him, then turned to Simone. "Schedule the meeting with the board." Simone nodded. "Already on the calendar." At that moment, the cabin lights dimmed. The APU had been reset. The mechanical issue was technically resolved, but now, the real problem had just begun. Roger Klein stepped forward one last time, voice sharp, forced calm barely concealing desperation. "Mr. Everett, this disruption has gone far enough. You've made your point." But Malcolm didn't move. He stood at the front of the first-class cabin, not as a passenger seeking boarding, but as a man who now controlled the altitude of the airline's future. Kristen Walsh, trying to recover her grip on the narrative, crossed her arms and laughed hollowly. "What are you going to do? Fire us?" she mocked. "You don't even work for this company." Her voice carried just far enough to reach the back of the plane, where a growing number of passengers were now filming openly, their cameras catching every frame. Malcolm looked at her, his expression unreadable, then turned to Simone. "Let's do it now." Simone raised the tablet, tapped once, and turned the screen toward Kristen and Roger. On it was a sealed corporate document, marked confidential and bearing the Horizon Air insignia, with the header, Investor Termination Protocol, Code 7. Thorough, board-authorized personnel removal. Below it, Malcolm's name appeared in bold, followed by the title, Executive Partner, Lead Investor, Strategic Compliance Oversight. Kristen's jaw dropped. "What is this?" she whispered. "This isn't real." Malcolm met her eyes, calm and final. "It's very real, and you're no longer employed by this airline." The silence that followed was so heavy, it seemed to mute the engines themselves. Kristen's face turned pale as Roger stepped back instinctively. Diane Foster, no longer smug, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Malcolm turned toward her. "You're not under employment. Ms. Foster, you're a customer, but your behavior today has crossed ethical boundaries. Your name will be forwarded to our partner carrier network, and I will personally recommend that you be placed on a denied boarding watch list." Diane opened her mouth to protest, but the words died on her tongue. No one in the cabin moved. No one interrupted. The authority in Malcolm's voice had shifted something irreversible. "Roger Klein," Malcolm continued, "you've enabled unlawful conduct, ignored protocol violations, and failed to de-escalate multiple federal breaches, effective immediately. Your credentials are suspended pending internal review. You will not be operating this flight." Roger looked around, visibly sweating, but there was nowhere to hide. A quiet voice from row 1 whispered, "This is better than Netflix." Kristen attempted one last stand. "You don't have the right." But Simone raised her voice, cutting in with practiced precision. "Actually, under Section 4 of Horizon Air's Emergency Oversight Charter, any executive investor with controlling interest in compliance matters may authorize staff removal in cases of confirmed regulatory abuse." She paused. "And everything that's happened in the last 43 minutes is now archived in a full compliance dossier. Video, logs, passenger witness statements, FAA alerts. You're done." Carla's voice then echoed from the gate intercom one last time. "This is a final notice. Horizon Air personnel. Kristen Walsh and Jared Tate have been formally removed from operational roles per Investor Oversight Code 7.3a. Please exit the cabin immediately." Jared, who had been slumped in a jump seat with his tablet now dark and useless, stood like a man waking from a bad dream. He moved past the seats, not looking at anyone. As Isaiah captured the entire walk of shame on live stream, Kristen hesitated, furious, humiliated. But when Malcolm gave her one final look, she broke. "You'll regret this," she muttered. "You'll all regret this." Malcolm said nothing, but the camera phones did. They recorded her last words with crystal clarity as she stormed down the aisle and out of view. Passengers sat stunned. Some clapped, unsure if it was allowed. Others simply stared in disbelief. Malcolm stepped back, folded his hands in front of him, and nodded toward Simone. "Let's move to the next step." Simone turned the tablet, swiped to a new window, and displayed a series of financial dashboards, Horizon Air's valuation graphs, media traffic, and live sell-off alerts. We're in full divestment mode. 42% of shared assets from Zenith Global are being pulled. 3 major route partnerships are being terminated. Ethan, standing near the galley, added, and the FAA has confirmed your recorded material is admissible. Regulatory hearings will be scheduled within 72 hours. Passengers around them whispered, then spoke louder. Is the airline going bankrupt? One asked. Did he really just fire the crew? Another asked Isaiah, who was still live streaming. He didn't fire the crew, Isaiah replied. He fired the rot. Diane Foster stood up abruptly, grabbing her designer tote. I refuse to fly with this man in charge. Malcolm turned to her. Then you'll be delighted to know this airline will no longer exist in its current form. You're not flying with me. You're flying out of relevance. She stormed toward the rear. Ignored and alone, Malcolm turned to the remaining passengers, finally addressing them not as an audience but as people. To everyone who witnessed this, thank you. You stood up when it counted. Some of you filmed, some of you spoke, some of you simply watched and judged for yourselves. That's all I needed. And with that, he sat down in seat 2A, now unlocked, the screen functional again, the tray table released. Simone took the seat beside him. Tablet still open. Across the aisle, the new flight crew arrived. Calm, quiet, professional. Flight 842 was about to depart, but Horizon Air's journey was already over. The cabin door closed behind Kristen and Jared with a sharp hiss, as if sealing the fate of more than just 2 disgraced employees. The plane remained grounded, but in that moment, Horizon Air ceased to be an airline and became a cautionary tale. Malcolm Everett sat in seat 2A, now reactivated, his back straight, posture calm, as Simone Carter handed him the Zenith Global tablet that bore the weight of everything to come. The home screen displayed a dashboard of real-time impact, media impressions rising past 50 million, stock price indicators blinking in red, and divestment orders stacked in succession. All systems primed, Simone said quietly. Legal has cleared the release. Carla's verified chain of custody. You can trigger the liquidation whenever you're ready. Malcolm didn't hesitate. He tapped once. A second screen appeared, confirming. Execute full asset withdrawal from Horizon Air Holdings. He tapped again. Confirmed. A progress bar filled across the screen. What had taken months to structure was undone in under 10 seconds. Behind the scenes, brokerage accounts lit up with auto-sell protocols, triggering a cascading market response that Horizon Air would never recover from. Ethan Brooks, now seated in 1C, looked up from his own laptop and nodded. We just dropped their valuation below FAA sustainability guidelines. They'll breach loan covenants by morning. From the galley, a stunned junior flight attendant whispered to her colleague. He didn't just cancel his seat. He canceled the company. Outside the aircraft, Lena Huang's latest headline hit the wire. Billionaire pulls plug on Horizon Air in real time. A lesson in power, race, and reform. It was picked up instantly by Reuters, MSNBC, and NPR. Even business outlets like Forbes and Bloomberg blasted breaking alerts. Horizon Air plunges 37% after CEO fallout. But Malcolm wasn't looking at headlines. His attention turned to the final tab on his screen, a quiet launch page for FlightSafe, a global AI-powered ethics platform designed to monitor, log, and report discrimination in real time across airports, airlines, customer service channels, and private contractors. He'd spent the last 2 years building it under the radar after similar incidents around the country. Now, he no longer needed to prove the need. The world had just watched it play out. Simone leaned closer. Launch protocol is live. Do we go public? Malcolm gave a single nod. Yes, make it open source. With another tap. FlightSafe launched to a growing community of pilots, passengers, whistleblowers, and transportation watchdogs. A simple message flashed across the platform's opening screen. Power shouldn't require a camera to exist. Justice shouldn't need to go viral to be real. Inside the aircraft, a surprising calm settled. The new crew had taken over without fanfare. The pilots rebooted the system. One of them, an older black man with silver at his temples, passed Malcolm's seat and paused for a second. He didn't speak, just nodded, firm, respectful, grateful. Malcolm nodded back. No words were needed. Isaiah, still holding his phone but now visibly moved, turned the camera toward himself. They thought they could humiliate him, he said softly. But he's giving us something way bigger. He's not just punishing an airline. He's building a safeguard for all of us. In that moment, thousands of viewers flooded the comment section with stories, pledges, outrage, and hope. The feed exploded with a new tag, #FlightSafeNow. Further down the aisle, passengers leaned in toward each other, some wiping away tears, others exchanging silent looks of recognition. They had come to the airport expecting a routine flight. Instead, they had witnessed the fall of an empire built on arrogance and the rise of something built on accountability. One woman, a schoolteacher from Detroit, whispered to her seatmate, "I think this just changed how I see everything." Her seatmate, a father traveling with his teenage son, replied, "It changed how my son sees everything too." At that moment, it wasn't about first class. It wasn't about who sat where. It was about the fact that someone, finally, had the power to say enough, and to back it with consequences. Malcolm looked out the window briefly, the late afternoon light casting a soft glow over the tarmac. Behind him, the wreckage of Horizon Air's reputation burned quietly across the internet, fanned by voices tired of being silenced. But he wasn't looking for applause. He wasn't looking for revenge. He was building something forward. "You know this won't be the last time," Simone said gently. "No," Malcolm replied. "But it'll be the last time they do it without a fight." And for the first time that day, the aircraft began to move, not just toward the runway, but toward something deeper, a future where silence would no longer be the final word. By the time Horizon Air Flight 842 finally lifted off the tarmac at JFK, the airline it represented was already falling from the sky, just not in the way the passengers expected. 35 minutes after takeoff, while cabin lights dimmed and beverage carts rolled softly down the aisle, Horizon Air's boardroom in Atlanta erupted into chaos. News of the divestment had spread like wildfire. Major routes were frozen mid-sail. Partnerships pulled, creditors called early. Kristen Walsh, now stripped of title and access, was served with a formal notice of litigation. Her actions, supported by archived footage and digital evidence from Carla's logs, became the centerpiece of a federal investigation into discriminatory airline practices. Diane Foster's name, flagged in Zenith Global's formal misconduct report, was quietly placed on multiple airline watch lists. She would never know the comfort of a quiet upgrade again. Jared Tate, whose tampering was captured in HD and backed by network data trails, faced immediate termination and civil liability for unauthorized interference with safety protocols. And Roger Klein, whose silence enabled every violation, found himself not just unemployed, but permanently blacklisted from aviation management by the following week. But for Malcolm Everett, the end was never the goal. It was what came after that mattered most. 3 days later, the FAA confirmed Horizon Air was under full investigation. Its stock trading halted, its brand facing collapse. The Department of Transportation launched a sweeping review of passenger discrimination complaints, starting with gate operations at JFK. Meanwhile, FlightSafe surged past 1 million users. Pilots signed on. Gate agents shared stories. Passengers submitted anonymous tips. The tool Malcolm built quietly in the background became a movement in plain sight. Simone Carter coordinated launch partnerships with 3 advocacy groups, and Ethan Brooks began consulting with Congress on legislative proposals to formally integrate ethics monitoring AI into airline compliance systems. But for Malcolm, the real legacy wasn't code or lawsuits. It was what happened in the days that followed, in places the cameras didn't catch. At a community center in Newark, a young black aviation student, who had watched Isaiah Reed's live stream from a cracked phone, opened an application to the Sky Forward program, Zenith Global's new initiative to recruit and train underrepresented youth in aviation. Funded entirely by Malcolm, it promised scholarships, mentorship, and job placement across 5 major carriers by 2026. At a diner in Tulsa, a white single mother read about FlightSafe and began sharing it with coworkers, recalling how her autistic son had once been forced to leave a flight due to a misunderstanding. She messaged the support team with gratitude and a tip about a small regional line with a troubling record in Los Angeles. A group of retired flight attendants reached out to Carla to offer stories from the past, asking if there was now finally a place those stories could matter. For the first time. Malcolm didn't take interviews. He declined talk shows, refused keynote requests. But 1 week later, in a private message posted to the homepage of FlightSafe, he wrote, "This was never about revenge. It was about removing the idea that dignity must be negotiated. You should never have to prove you belong where you've already earned your place." The message, short and measured, closed with a quiet call. If they've ever told you not here, tell them, I help decide what here becomes. Back on the ground, Horizon Air's competitors scrambled to issue policy updates and public apologies for past incidents. Hoping to avoid being next, their legal teams reached out to Zenith Global, asking for best practices, hoping for guidance instead of exposure. Malcolm agreed. But only under one condition: they'd have to sign on to the industry's first ethics and equity consortium, with real-time reporting, whistleblower protections, and zero-tolerance enforcement for bias in passenger treatment. By month's end, 5 airlines had joined, and as for Isaiah Reed, the young man who never stopped filming, his following tripled overnight. But instead of cashing in with sponsored posts, he used his platform to launch a docuseries called Still Boarding, chronicling the untold stories of travelers silenced or mistreated. In the pilot episode, he sat across from Malcolm in a quiet hangar outside Newark, cameras rolling as they simply talked about legacy, power, and what it meant to move forward with intention. "They wanted to make you small," Isaiah said, "and now they're rebuilding around your name." Malcolm gave a slight smile. "Not around my name. Around the truth." As Flight 842 landed quietly in Atlanta, the final approach was smooth, the sun low on the horizon. In Seat 2A, Malcolm Everett remained composed, the weight of the day no longer on his shoulders, but now built into something lasting. Simone glanced out the window beside him. "You know, a lot of people will call this a takedown." He shook his head gently. "It's a beginning, because when you own your seat, no one gets to erase you from it again. If you've ever been overlooked, dismissed, or told you didn't belong, your story matters. Drop it in the comments. Let your voice join the others who are changing what normal looks like. And if you believe that justice doesn't need permission to take off, share this video. Because the next time someone's seat is challenged, the whole world might be watching and ready to rise.